Well, what's going on, Candelas? It is Dan Thomas with 8Z Real Estate, also one of your neighbors. And this week, for Spotlight on Candelas, I have a very special guest. I think I have outkicked my coverage to be interviewing this person. As you can see, Sarah Mann is, Jefferson County's representative for Mrs. Colorado. And we'll get into that event and how, as a neighborhood, we can help. But also, Sarah has a successful PT practice here in Arvada. She is a Candelas resident, and it's very special for another reason, because her and her team is leading the movement for PT and Down syndrome. So yeah, Sarah, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much for having me tonight. I am so grateful to be here.
Yeah, and obviously you're covering the evening portion, the evening gown portion of tonight's event. So
yes, we definitely have to keep practicing how to walk in the long flowy dress, and I am never gonna pass up an opportunity to wear my blue sparkles.
Well, you look beautiful. So
thanks so much. So fun.
Yeah. So this could be your dress rehearsal for the Q&A section of the event.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we'll definitely cover the Mrs. Colorado part, but I definitely wanted to dive into spotlighting your business and your facility. And for people that might not be aware, you're over in Five Parks, right next to Jack's. But why don't you tell all the neighbors kind of what your center's about?
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for inviting me on here, and I'm so excited just to share just a little good news for Candelas about all our neighbors working together and doing good things in Candelas, in Arvada, across the country, and just that we're doing good things, and that makes me feel happy to represent our community to that effect. So I have a small private practice in Five Parks right by Jack's, and we specialize in PT and OT across the lifespan for individuals with Down syndrome. So we have PT, we have OT, we have music therapy, and we also have orthopedic and rehabilitation PT for the parents and caregivers of our patients and our community members here in Candelas. So it's a practice that has grown over the past few years to really just meet the needs of all the people we get to serve, both in our special populations and in our community.
Yeah, and how did you get started? Because again, you hear PT and OT thrown out all the time, but specifically for people with Down syndrome, that seems pretty specified. So how'd that come about?
So 20 years ago, which is now like 20 years ago, wow, I was working as a personal trainer, and that's where I started. I love fitness, I love exercise, I love weightlifting, and I was working in the gyms as a young 20-something who knew absolutely everything about everything. You could just ask me. And a wonderful woman came up to me and she said, "Would you mind working with my son and doing some personal training with him?" And I said, "Of course, I'd love to. That's my job. I know everything." And she's great. She says, "Great, that he's 40 and he has Down syndrome." And I just was like, wow, I know nothing about people with Down syndrome, but I adored working with this man. And I worked with him twice a week, and it was the best part of my week. So I didn't really know what to do or anything special to do different, but we talked about the golden age of bodybuilding and Franco Colombo and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Dave Draper. And we did safe exercises that made him feel better and move better. And I felt happy seeing his progress. And it was amazing. So then another family came up to me at the gym and said, "Would you work with my son? He has Down syndrome." And I said, "Absolutely. I've worked with one person with Down syndrome. I know everything about it." And they said,
knowing everything, right?
I mean, as a 20-year-old, I was very, very gifted in all things of the world. I've progressively learned that I just need to keep learning more now.
Yeah.
So it turned out that this next young man that I was working with was very different than the first young man I'd worked with. And then another family came and asked me if I'd work with their son. And another family asked if I work with their daughter. And so I was becoming this specialist personal trainer working with individuals with Down syndrome. And it was my favorite part of personal training. But what I really wanted to do was learn how to take care of my people better. So what I was realizing, even though I knew everything, was that I didn't know anything about how to see the bigger picture or understand greater on a medical level, how to take better care of the people I was entrusted with. So I decided that to do that, I'd like to be their doctor. But I didn't want to be their medical doctor. I wanted to be their movement doctor. So I decided to go back to PT school and get my doctorate in physical therapy so that I could take care of my people better. And so I did. So I got into PT school at CU, at the CU Medical Campus, and I walked up to my advisor that first day and said, "Hi, I'm Sarah Mann, and I am here to get my PT degree so that I can work with teenagers and adults with Down syndrome." And they said, "Okay, you should probably get to anatomy and get to work." And so I did. And that's where I've been going ever since. And now here we are, many years later, with this wonderful clinic in Five Parks. And it's grown so much over the past years because we've just been blessed with all these people in our lives. And so it's been just really special to see that growth as well.
Yeah, and you had a very specific, I guess, you identified a very specific need that, and maybe, you mentioned to this in kind of when we chatted before this interview that, for Down syndrome, there's a lot of health benefits for pediatrics and kids, but then it gets to a point where it just stops. And you had identified a need for teenagers and young adults to continue to get the benefits and the service. So can you expand a little bit on that?
You bet. So for individuals with Down syndrome, when they're born, there's some amazing services for little kids, for babies. Therapists will come to your home through early intervention, and it's awesome. From birth to age 3, you have people come into your home and help you learn how to help your baby even more, which is awesome. But what I really noticed was that at age 3, that really stopped. And sometimes you could get some private services, or you'd go into the school system and there'd be PTs and OTs and speech therapists there that would help your child access the environment, is what they call it in the schools. So if you can get up the stairs, you can get to the playground, you can sit at your desk, that's what you get. So it becomes a little bit less individualized and more as part of participating in your school environment, which is great. And then as our kids get older and they become teenagers and adults, the PT and the OT and the speech often drops off because they're getting around, they're participating in school, and no one's checking in to see, are they okay? Now, for people with Down syndrome, they have some inherent things going on with their physiology, increased flexibility through their ligaments, increased bendiness in all their joints, that made me concerned, saying, I am pretty sure there's some orthopedic things that are still happening, even though they're teenagers and adults. So my passion when I first started was working with these teenagers and adults and saying, hey, I am here to check on you and make sure that you are moving to the best of your ability and that we can do all the awesome things that we're going to do in your life. And that's where I started, was looking at that area of teenagers and adults. What I found is that there's actually a huge gap in care at a systemic level that's way bigger than I ever anticipated, not just for individuals with Down syndrome, but for individuals with any developmental disability, cerebral palsy, autism, just any diagnosis you can think of that a child might receive when they're little, they still have when they grow up, but there's not that amazing plethora of developmental pediatricians in the adult realm. And so this concept of transitional medicine, of providing access to care for teenagers and adults with developmental disabilities, has become something that I'm very passionate about, and that is my real life. I get to do it every day with my team and see the effect it has, that people, no matter what age they are, they still keep learning and improving and developing.
Right. So you have the serendipitous moment where Down syndrome found you at the gym, when you're 20.
It's true.
And you know everything.
And I knew everything, and then had to go to school and spend the next 20 years still learning more.
Yeah, so that propels you into going to school, becoming a doctor. You identify a very specific need in this industry for underserved, individuals with Down syndrome. So you start a practice and feel like, okay, all right, I have my why, I have my passion, and now I'm living it. But it didn't stop there. Organically, it sounded like, it didn't stop with you, that your team and your practice can continue to grow. So can you share kind of the unfolding of that story?
You bet. So there I was doing my practice, seeing my patients, and realizing, wow, there really was a need. I am so glad I'm here to help, and having such fun doing it. And that was awesome. And then we moved to Candelas. So in 2015, we realized that we wanted to move up here. And by May 2016, we were moving. And a lot of my patients worked over at Jack's. So okay. in May 2016, I drove over by Jack's, and I looked up above Jack's, and I'm not going to lie, I was thinking a little bit mean thoughts. I was like, I hope those people love living up there, because I sure would love to have a practice there. Because I thought all of it was condos.
Right.
And then the week of Thanksgiving, Jack called me up out of the blue and said, hey, Sarah, I hear you have a practice that specializes in working with adults with Down syndrome, and you know some of my friends. I'm like, yes, Jack, I do. He goes, would you like to have a space above our restaurant for your practice?
Sarah, sorry to cut you off, just in case somebody just moved into Candelas and never heard of Jack's, can you kind of explain why Jack's has a lot of friends that you work with?
Yeah, so Jack's is the most awesome restaurant in Arvada, in my opinion. All of them are great, but Jack's is my favorite, because they provide sustainable employment for adults with developmental disabilities. So they employ over 30 individuals with developmental disabilities doing real jobs, like in the kitchen, in the prep kitchen, in the restaurant, doing real things as part of the restaurant, as part of the community. And I have seen from knowing my patients who've worked there for so long that it's just like us, for having a job that we're passionate about. This is huge in their life, and they are dedicated and amazing employees. And so I really love Jack's and Jack and Ethan, who own it, because this is part of their vision for a community restaurant.
Right.
So when they called up and said, Sarah, we hear that you share our vision and there's a space for you, I was just like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad we moved to Candelas. I can't believe this. So that happened at Thanksgiving. And then a couple months later, I got a call that one of my favorite OTs in the world, occupational therapist, was moving 2 houses down from me. So she had worked at Children's and trained with an occupational therapist that was my mentor's colleague. So it was like the 2 PTs and OTs who specialized in working with kids with Down syndrome, both trained Jamie McGrew and I. So as soon as she moved in, I mean, she hadn't even like unpacked a box, and I was already knocking on her door saying, oh my goodness, Jamie McGrew, I'm Sarah Mann. Do you want to come work with me? And we just hit it off right away with the same sort of passion and perspective and approach that was just so complimentary. So Jamie McGrew, my wonderful neighbor, came in to start working with us, and it was amazing. And so we're working with all our teenagers and adults with Down syndrome, providing this synergistic care of occupational therapy and physical therapy, and I'm just feeling amazing, and it's feeling so good. And then all these sweet babies and toddlers, their parents start calling and they're saying, hey, can you please see my baby? Can you see my toddler? And I was like, wow, that's really not my specialty. I don't have that skill set. But my best friend is the most amazing pediatric physical therapist. Let me see if I can get her to come work with us. And so she lives in Lakewood in Jefferson County. And I said, Jennifer Spirik, please, please, please come over and help these babies. Please help these toddlers. Please help these school-age kids. I need help. And so she did. And so by then, once I had this amazing occupational therapist who lives down the street, my best friend, pediatric physical therapist, and I'm seeing teens and adults, you can imagine that I was getting a little overwhelmed by trying to manage all the paperwork and insurance and dotting my I's and crossing my T's. So as luck would have it, our other neighbor, JJ Olson, was getting tired of her healthcare policy lobbying position and said, Sarah, I'd really like to try something new. Do you need any help? And so she came and she volunteered a whole summer just helping me run classes for adults with disabilities. So we had 11 people in a class in our tiny office. And JJ just had never worked in that environment, but she jumped right in. She helped everybody. She made sure everyone was safe. She made sure everything was running smoothly. And that was 3 years ago. And so we had another neighbor on board. And then just as we're getting going, just settling into the bigger and bigger flow, we started really realizing that our parents and caregivers were struggling a lot themselves or not taking care of themselves. Or we had other neighbors from Candelas saying, Sarah, you're a PT. Can you take care of my hip replacement? Can you help me with my shoulder? And that's not my specialty. So we're lucky enough, again, the orthopedic and sports rehab physical therapist that I always refer to is a colleague of ours from PT school, Dr. Stephanie Hansen. And she was having so much fun working with our parents and the caregivers and working with the Candelas community members that came into our office that she decided to stay. So what happened was, just a few years ago, it was just me living my dream, helping the people I wanted to help, doing those things. And we've been so blessed by being in this community to be put right next to, like literally right next to, I'm waving at Jamie's house, right next to people that have made our practice and our purpose expand and better. So it's just been amazing with that growth every step of the way.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it seems like it all happened organically around, there was a need that came up in the service of your patients, and rather than just push it aside and decide that that's not what your practice does, you went and found a solution for it.
Well, and yes, and it was mostly because it fell into our lap in our neighborhood here. There are so many people in this community doing awesome things that it was literally next door. I didn't even have to walk off my block. So it was so amazing that that's a part of it, is that there's just good people doing good things that have made our practice more purposeful and helpful.
Right, and that it happened organically, mostly in Candelas. I know all of it was Jefferson County, but
but mostly in Candelas.
Yeah. So that's the expansion piece. And when we were talking yesterday, I was like, okay, that's a really great story, and it's awesome work that you all are doing. And, then I was given the heads up by you that, hey, that's not where it stops, that, you guys and your team is at the forefront and the leaders of, PT, OT, health services for, people with Down syndrome, teen and young adults.
And that is true. Yes. So one of the reasons why I love private practice is that it gives you the opportunity to say yes to collaborate with so many different people. And to that effect, we have been partnered, Mann Method PT has been partnered with the Global Down Syndrome Foundation, Rocky Mountain Down Syndrome Association, and GiGi's Playhouse for the past 5 years. And so by partnering with each of those organizations, we've had the opportunity to expand our reach from just local to statewide to nationwide and even international. What we've also had the opportunity to do is refine our approach using the Mann Method PT principles for working with individuals with Down syndrome across the lifespan, and put it into teachable programming that we provide as education nationwide, where we speak at the National Down Syndrome Conference, at the GiGi's Playhouse National Leadership Conferences, and throughout, and at the universities as well, providing education on our approach and it's our recommended approach to working with individuals with Down syndrome, particularly teens and adults, saying people are talking about this transitional care, but no one knows what to do about it because it can be daunting. It can be new and a little frightening, and we want to make it so that people are successful. So what we've done is we've had the opportunity to speak all over the country and provide education to providers, parents, caregivers all over the country. That's amazing, being able to do that with the National Down Syndrome Conference and to be able to do it through GiGi's Playhouse. We've been able to speak here in Colorado with the Global Down Syndrome Foundation and help with research and be a partner on the Global Down Syndrome Foundation's task force providing adult care standards for individuals with Down syndrome. So Mann Method PT and our team, we get to step in and say, here's what you should do. Here are the PT recommendations for adults with Down syndrome, and put it into a document that is now spread throughout the country. Whoa, that's sciencey. That was amazing. With Rocky Mountain Down Syndrome Association, they provide Colorado-based services for families with Down syndrome, with kids with Down syndrome, with adults with Down syndrome. And they have asked us to partner with them to provide specialized care and clinics throughout the state of Colorado. So Jamie McGrew and I have packed up our clinic in a box and headed to Grand Junction, headed to Colorado Springs, headed to Steamboat, so that we can see families there that may not have had PT or OT services in 30 years. So it's been amazing to give them strategies and just to have someone say, wow, this has been really hard and no one's helped us look at it. Thank you. Here's something we can do after 2 hours spending with you guys. So Rocky Mountain Down Syndrome Association has helped us do that.
All right, so clearly Sarah is an authentic Candelas resident, as the wind picked up outside and was getting a little hairy there. So we decided to move things back inside. But you were speaking about more of the national side of the movement, with GiGi's Playhouse before we kind of had that wind interruption. So you were saying.
Yes. So, sorry, we had a little wind burst, as it happens time to time here.
Yeah.
So
that's what we call it, Candelas. So
Candelas. It's always, but it's breezy. It's just fluffing it up. Yeah. Yes. So then our partnership with GiGi's Playhouse has been phenomenal. A few years ago, they asked us to redesign their fitness program, GiGi Fit. So GiGi's Playhouse is a set of Down syndrome achievement centers. They're actual brick and mortar locations that are in 48 different locations in the United States. So when they came to us and asked us to redesign their fitness program, I was delighted, because what an amazing and purposeful way to make an impact for all the people that I care about who I can't see in California and Texas and Illinois. So of course we started with the teen and adult program, and then Dr. Jen came on board for our pediatrics, so we were able to design the infant and toddler program. Then we worked together putting together the school age program, and then we put together a caregiver program based on the strategies that our OT Jamie McGrew recommends, and that our sports medicine physical therapist Stephanie Hansen recommended for the caregivers. So our whole team got to come together to put the best of our practice into a program that now serves 20,000 families across the country, which is just amazing to me. So, I mean, it's just a dream come true when it comes to the impact that we're having, and that I never knew to ask that big.
Right.
And so GiGi's Playhouse is run by a fireball of a mama and CEO, Nancy Gianni. Her daughter Gigi is 17 and has Down syndrome, also a fireball.
Okay.
And they are just a force to be reckoned with. And so here I am feeling just amazed once again that I have this spectacular team that's from our community, that I love to be with, that we're taking care of the people that we want to care for, and feeling so good about that, that we have all these opportunities to share our practice with the state and now share it nationwide. And then last year, GiGi's just decided to bump it up a notch, and Microsoft decided that they wanted to turn the GiGi Fit program into an app for people with Down syndrome, so that we could do purposeful PT-based movements through the GiGi Fit program across the world. So it's so fun to just, and totally surreal to me, to start my Wednesday mornings talking with people from Microsoft all over the world, and with GiGi's Playhouse helping push forward our team's approach to PT for individuals with Down syndrome, babies, toddlers, school age, teen, and adult, and that people will have this access wherever they are. So what started is like, here's the people that I love to work with, and I really want to do that for my real life, has become working with a team that built a beautiful and refined approach that we could share in science, we could share in our speaking in our community, we could share in our state, we could share in outreach in our state, we could share on a national platform, and now that we're getting to participate even at an international level, has just been this phenomenal growth and change that's been amazing for our company and just for us as therapists.
Right, and that's what I found so cool about your story, and just, you are being very modest with this, but again, I thought it was like, oh, okay, they have a nice PT practice next to Jack's, and obviously it's an awesome why, and something that's definitely needed. But then the more we talked, it's like, this little practice that a majority of the employees are Candelas residents, are on the forefront of this movement that covers from pediatrics all the way to adulthood, and even now it's expanded into the caregivers and the parents and that sort of thing. And I think I find that awesome that it's being led by Candelas residents.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing, and but it is also so serendipitous, and it's just a joy because it feels good and it's doing good.
Right.
So I think that's really amazing, and
now,
it brings so much together.
Yeah. Now, did you have an idea or a sense that, I mean, I know when you started, 20 years ago, you realized, I guess, more within your bubble at a local level, that there was a need for this, transitional service and benefits. But did you sense that this was lacking at a national level as well, or is that something that just kind of evolved once you started your practice?
Well, I mean, it makes sense when you start to think about it. Like I said, when I was 20 and I knew everything, I'm pretty sure I'm sure I would have known it then, right?
Right.
But no. So when I was 20 and I was looking at the 4 people that I was working with who had Down syndrome, and I was noticing just movement patterns and learning more about how their bodies were working, and realized that there's probably something tricky that maybe people aren't seeing. And so when I would ask questions like, who did you go to for the doctor, or have you followed up, or if they talked to me, the personal trainer, the 20-year-old personal trainer, about their foot pain, I'd say, well, what did the doctor say? And they said, oh, well, my pediatrician that we used to go to was this, but now that I'm 22, I don't see him anymore, and we're looking for a doctor. So there were definitely clues early on that there were gaps in care all across the board, but I didn't have the capacity to understand it quite yet.
Okay.
And so it wasn't until I started getting more established in my practice with my adults with Down syndrome and looking at hip replacements and being the one that's referring them back for orthopedic care, and then being called into the orthopedic surgeon's office to talk with them about how to approach care for individuals with Down syndrome. We've worked with some amazing doctors, but I could see that this was like the first person with Down syndrome they've ever worked with. And I was there, so I understand, but just seeing like, well, there's a higher incidence of hip instability and hip degeneration, I would think that you would see more people. But I was realizing over and over that not only that in Colorado were people not finding the right care, that this is probably system-wide. And so when I started speaking at the National Down Syndrome Congress, each year, that's our main Down syndrome community giant conference every year. And it's where all the providers and all the doctors and all the research centers and all the parents and all the providers and all the self-advocates go every year for this huge, like 5,000 person conference to learn about what's going on, learn about strategies for help, and everyone gets together. And the first time I looked at it and I was speaking there, like I was the only PT talking about working with teenagers and adults with Down syndrome. And there's a lot of information about working with littles, but there wasn't that much information on transition and becoming an adult. And so when I started going to these conferences and talking to people, I really realized like, wow, this is a problem across the country. And so then the next year when I joined the Down syndrome medical interest group, that's like where the doctors for people with Down syndrome go to this other special conference each year. And that's when I started learning that there's only a small group of us that work with the teenagers and adults. So out of 100 people in this group attending that conference, there's 10 of us that specialize in the more teen and adult models. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I also thought, wow, that's probably representative across the board for all people with developmental disability, not just Down syndrome. And it's hard because you have great pediatricians, you have great therapists when you're young, and then there's this section, now you're 18, now you're 21, no matter where you live. If you live in Arvada, if you live in Aurora, if you live in Illinois, it's hard no matter where you are. And so having that opportunity with my team to do things virtually and to do things on a large scale level that put some of our approach out there and access, I hope it makes it easier for people who are running into a lot of hard with that transition time.
And are you seeing growth in this movement where, nationally you are meeting and hearing about more PTs and OTs that are specializing more in this transitional phase than just the pediatrics?
what's awesome is that we get the opportunity to share a lot with PTs and OTs across the board. And that way they have a toolkit. If someone walks in their office who's 35 with Down syndrome, they have an approach that they can start with so they don't have to be daunted. And we get a lot of calls from people that we speak with at conferences saying, this is what happened, or thanks, I saw your talk, and then guess what happened that next Thursday? I met a new friend. But it's not an area that a lot of people go into. And so that's what's been fun about being able to speak at the universities. So every year I speak and do lecturing at the University of Colorado School of Medicine for our PT program, and getting to speak at University of Texas, and getting to speak at a lot of different other universities to talk to the students. And what's fun is that there's always usually 1 or 2 students that reach out saying, hey, I'd love to talk more. And so last year we had 5 students with us that are all in different phases of PT school that have been with us in some capacity as interns.
Okay.
And my hope is that by showing them the need and how fun and awesome it is to work with our population across the lifespan, my hope, and giving them tools and strategies to work with our team, that they're looking at their future and thinking perhaps this is something they want to go, where they want to go into that field of transitional medicine. But it's something on a national level. The American Physical Therapy Association looks after it and has a task force working on the need for more transitional medicine specialists. But it's a daunting field to many. Right. And we hope to show that it's an awesome and very rewarding field to pursue.
Right. Well, as a Candelas resident, I'm proud that that Candelas is a part of all this work that you guys are doing. I think, as you said, good people doing a lot of good work. So that's great. So we'll get back to your movement here in a second, but obviously, as we mentioned at the beginning, there's a reason that you're in the ball gown and sash, and
it's just what we wear around our house usually. You never know what's going to happen at the Mann house.
Yes. Either there's a reason for it, or your family's just a lot fancier than most of us. But as I mentioned at the top, you are the representative for Jefferson County in the Mrs. Colorado competition. So as somebody who was not aware of what this competition was 48 hours ago, just in case there's somebody else like me, can you kind of just give us a little background and information on what the Mrs. Colorado competition is all about?
Yes, so the Mrs. Colorado competition is a competition for married ladies in Colorado competing to participate and represent Colorado in the Mrs. America pageant. So just like you think of the Miss America with the wonderful 20-something rocket scientists competing, that's so amazing. That was not me. But this is the opportunity for married women to also participate in the pageant system and push themselves to be their best version and represent their community, but also have another opportunity and another place to share their passion, their platform at both the state level and maybe even at eventually the national level. And so the pageant this year is going to be very different thanks to COVID-19, and is going to be very different, very fun, but will be on July 19th at the Denver Mart Drive-In, because we're going to film everything instead of the traditional pageant that's usually at the Ellie Calkins Opera House.
Okay.
We're going to film it and put it together, and then everyone can be properly socially distanced at the drive-in while we watch the pageant video.
And how do you get started? I mean, obviously, you mentioned it's another way to, you know, get your platform out to more people and expand on that and your passions. You know, but was there any other reasons why you got involved with it?
Yeah, I really think it's like threefold when I think about it. So the first reason is that turning 40, I really wanted something that was going to give me a nudge to head into my 40s as my best version of myself. So I needed a little nudge to take care of myself and be a better version of myself. But the second part is I wanted to do something that also incorporated my family. Like, you don't want to just do something that's just you, because I love my family and I love showcasing how fun they are and I love being around them. So the Mrs. Colorado pageant is for married women. So you get to bring your husband and your kids along for this crazy ride, and they get to dress up and be fancy and have fun. And that's awesome. And with that, you're representing your family and your community. Like, you get to say, I'm working on being the best version of myself. And here's my family and here's my community that I'm super proud that I have this dash saying Jefferson County. Like, these are my people. And I'm proud to represent that. And then the third part of it is that it really is fun to have the opportunity to talk more personally about the passion that I have and the excitement that I have about providing access to care for individuals with Down syndrome across the lifespan. So when I'm speaking professionally, when I'm speaking at conferences, when I'm talking to my colleagues in the Down syndrome medical interest group, it's got to be a little more formal. You've got to present yourself as a very professional way. And my natural exuberance and enthusiasm is often a little bit overwhelming, even when I'm doing my best to tone it down. And so people can be a little taken aback when I get too excited talking in a professional capacity. So having the opportunity to participate in the Mrs. Colorado pageant and represent our community and represent our people and the life and the beliefs we have at Mann Method PT is so fun and a little liberating, because I get to speak so passionately about what we do in real life every day, but I get to share that enthusiasm unbridled.
Right. Yeah, there's got to be an excitement to be in a different format and speaking about it, and not just in that professional sense. So,
well, I got to tell you, Dan, there's a fourth reason that I got to say it too. The fourth reason is that having this opportunity to participate as Mrs. Jefferson County and hopefully as Mrs. Colorado is that I get to also expose different people to the nonprofits that we support. So as you've said to me before, like, those who are given much must give back more. And so Global Down Syndrome Foundation and Rocky Mountain Down Syndrome Association and GiGi's Playhouse, they've given us so much with our ability to share what we believe and to share our vision with the world, that my hope is too, by sharing my platform and sharing the people that we work with and the organizations that we work with, that other people will become aware of them and hopefully support them as well. So really fourfold.
Right. And you brought something to my attention when you said it yesterday when we spoke. It was a no-brainer, but I hadn't really thought about it with everything that's going on with COVID, is how COVID is impacting nonprofits. I know, obviously from a pandemic sense and a health sense and employment and those things, I think that's been covered pretty thoroughly. But from nonprofits specifically, they're some of them are struggling and have concerns because a lot of their fundraising capacities have been taken away from them with stay-at-home orders, safer-at-home orders, and that sort of thing. So can you touch on that for a second?
Absolutely. So that's huge. So these organizations that we work with, that we support, that support us, that support, most importantly, the people that we work with, they are organizations dedicated to the service of individuals with Down syndrome and their family. And over the past 3 months, with the shutdown, the safe at home, the safer at home, all the things, they've had to cancel some of their most major fundraising events. GiGi's Playhouse has had to cancel over 30 different fundraising events across the country. And these are fundraising events, like the big ones, like this is their main gala, or this is their main walk, that generate the funds that operate the organization through the year. So just watching that has been heartbreaking, because the programming is so important. And seeing that now the gala is going to be online is awesome, but people, you know, they'll forget. They've been on Zoom all day. They did, oh, that was tonight. And it's just easy to forget something on the computer, as opposed to being there in real life and swept up in the excitement and the purpose. And so if I can help people say, oh, you know, I'd love to share 10% of my stimulus money with a nonprofit, then I'm like, I have 3 I'd love to talk to you about. And they have been hit hard during this time because their fundraising events have been canceled or shifted or waylaid. So watching GiGi's Playhouse have to cancel events and know that that's going to impact the programming that they're offering. Watching the Global Down Syndrome Foundation do their model auditions online instead of in person has been like, oh my goodness, I hope that we're able to do the fundraiser in October. Looking at Rocky Mountain Down Syndrome Association, redesigning their Tee Up for Down Syndrome and how to do the fundraising that's normally their second largest fundraiser, but now has to be totally revamped, is really, I want to find a way to help them. And if I can get the word out to just a few more people who wouldn't have known last week, then that's awesome. That's amazing, because that's another help for the people that I care about.
Yeah, so obviously you can do that, you know, during the Mrs. Colorado event and get that out to more people. But you know, I also think that, and this is, you know, not any sort of guilt trip or anything. You know, I know people are. It's tough times for a lot of people, and I'm sure there's a lot of our neighbors in Candelas that it's a tough time for, and you know, those are the people that need to be, you know, focused on their families. But at the same time, you're right, there is stimulus money. There are people that haven't been impacted as much with COVID as others. And so if you do have, you know, if you've been thinking about giving back, if you want, and you're trying to figure out, you know, what platform should, you know, you donate to, again, we have a great platform and a movement that's being led by, you know, 3 great Candelas neighbors of ours. So
We've got some suggestions we'd be happy to share.
yeah, and so real quickly, and we'll make sure that we put this in the comment section, you know, how people can help. But just real quickly, those suggestions, you know, let's take this time and let our neighbors know.
Awesome. So if you are looking for nonprofits to support that could use some help, please go check out GiGi's Playhouse Inc. You can donate nationally, or you can donate here at the GiGi's Playhouse Denver. You could donate to Rocky Mountain Down Syndrome Association, just RockyMountainDownSyndromeAssociation.org, or you could donate to the Global Down Syndrome Foundation, also based here in Denver. If you have skills or other things you want to donate, time or energy, they are always looking for volunteers as well. And that would be an amazing gift of your time as well.
Yeah. And I've always been proud of our neighborhood and our community, because I truly do think Candelas cares. So if, again, if you were looking for a way in this tough time to kind of turn a negative into a positive, whether you have the financial means to make a donation, or like Sarah mentioned, just your time, those are 3 great charities and nonprofits that we can support. So now, how can we support you? You know, back to the Mrs. Colorado front. How can we support you and help you be our Colorado representative for Mrs. Colorado?
Oh man, that'd be so fun. Candelas goes all the way to the top. Well, right now we have what's called the People's Choice voting is open. So if you go to mrscoloradoamerica.com, you'll see it on there, People's Choice, and we can put a link in there as well. And each vote is $2, and the candidate who receives the most People's Choice votes gets voted into the finals. So you get right up to the top 5 and have the opportunity to represent Mrs. Colorado in the national pageant. So that would be super helpful. You can come and support at the drive-in if you'd like to come and cheer. We will be there. We're taking the Army truck, decorating it up for Jeffco, and headed over to celebrate there on Wednesday, July 15th. So that is another way to support. But just getting the word out would be super fun and helpful as well.
All right, let's do it, Candelas. We got our marching orders. So
we've got it. We're ready to go.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I do apologize. There was an error in recording the exit of my interview with Sarah. I do apologize to Sarah and especially her husband and 2 sons as they took the time to get dressed up in their tuxedos to demonstrate that the Mrs. Colorado pageant is a family affair. So I do apologize for not capturing that. We do have a picture just to give everybody a glimpse of how great the entire family looked. So thank you for that effort, and I apologize for my error with that recording. I do want to thank Sarah. Obviously, she has a great story, and her and her team being on the forefront of this movement on a national and international scale. It's awesome that she's a Candelas resident. If you want to learn more about Sarah's practice, her team, their movement, you can visit their website at mannmethodpt.com. Also, we can do our part as a community to help send Sarah to the National Mrs. America pageant as the Colorado representative. There is a People's Choice voting that's going on, and we'll have that website in the description as well, but it's mrscoloradoamerica.com/people's choice/Sarah M. And then also, if you do want to help out the 3 charities that Sarah mentioned in the interview, obviously a lot of charities and nonprofits have been impacted by COVID with not being able to do a lot of their normal fundraising events to raise the necessary funds for the annual budget. So if you do want to participate in that, we also have the websites in the description, but they're GiGi's Playhouse, Rocky Mountain Down Syndrome Association, and the Global Down Syndrome Foundation. So if you can chip in a little bit, I know these charities are struggling and hurting, and it would be great if we could do our part. Lastly, thanks for watching. If you are a business that you'd like to be featured on for this spotlight on Candelas, you can email me at dan@8z.com. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see everybody next time. Bye-bye.